Welcome, seekers of the profound and the unspoken, to Anything You Want, the only digital sanctuary where we refuse to accept the glossy surface of celebrity culture. We are here to dig beneath the headlines, to touch the raw nerves of human experience, and to understand the heartbeat behind the fame. Before we embark on today's odyssey of love, panic, and redemption, I invite you to anchor yourself within our growing family. Subscribe to the channel to ensure you never miss a chapter of these unfolding sagas. Press the like button to signal your presence to the algorithm. And for those who wish to be the true patrons of this storytelling art, I urge you to click the join button. By becoming a member, you are not just a viewer, you are a guardian of deep, investigative storytelling. Today, we stand at the threshold of a fairy tale that fractured before the first page could be turned. We are transporting you to the banks of the Bosphorus, to a wedding that had the entire nation holding its breath. Yağmur Yüksel and Barış Baktaş, two names that evoke romance, youth, and promise, were poised to step into eternity. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the fairy tale dissolved into a mystery. The bride was gone. The groom was silent. And the world was left asking, is this the end of a love story, or the violent birth of a real one? Stay with us, here on Anything You Want, as we walk through the empty halls of the wedding that never was. Yağmur Yüksel and Barış Baktaş were about to step into the fantasy everyone thought they knew by heart. Millions of fans had already imagined the moment, the silk of the gown rustling against the stone, the trembling vows spoken in hushed tones, the way his eyes would search for hers and find their permanent home. It was to be the coronation of a romance that had captivated the public imagination. But under the sheen of this curated perfection, a breeze turned to a shiver, and a shiver to a bone-deep chill. It happened quickly, brutally, and without warning. Hours as mere hours, before the first notes of the wedding march were scheduled to climb the air, the bride was nowhere to be found. This was not a fashionable delay designed to heighten anticipation. This was not a diva's quirk or a minor logistical hiccup. This was a vanishing act of existential proportions. Panic cut through the celebrations like a shard of glass, severing the joy from the atmosphere. In the bridal suite, a room designed for joy, time seemed to hold its breath in a terrifying stillness. The dress, a masterpiece of silk, lace, and luminous beadwork, hung uninhabited on a velvet mannequin, the ghostly image of a dream without a dreamer. Makeup brushes slept on the vanity, untouched, their bristles gathering dust as if they too had stopped breathing. The air in the room was thick with the scent of hairspray and abandonment. Downstairs, the guests began to feel the shift like a low, spreading fever. These were not just friends and family, this was a gathering of the elite, a collection of famous faces and industry titans. The tables, set with silver and fine china, turned into islands of frantic speculation. The murmur of conversation, initially joyous, darkened into a hum of conspiracy. Some looked for a scandal, their eyes darting around for a sign of betrayal. Others looked for a villain, a third party who might have sabotaged the union. And some, the more cynical among them, wondered if this was all elaborate theater. But at the eye of this gathering storm stood Barış Baktaş. In a situation that would have shattered a lesser man, he did not explode. He did not crumble. He stood steadfast, a lighthouse in a hurricane. He was not cold, nor was he aloof, rather, he possessed a quiet certainty that made the frantic rumors swirling around him look small and petty. While whispers grew fangs and cameras angled for blood, hoping to catch a glimpse of a broken groom, he gathered his team. His voice was even, persistent, and devoid of the panic that had infected the rest of the villa. I know the woman I love, he told them, his eyes scanning the horizon not with fear, but with determination. She wouldn't run without a reason that breaks her heart. There is an answer, and I will find it. In the glare of public embarrassment, with the eyes of the country upon him, his loyalty became the first true vow spoken that day. He refused to play the role of the jilted lover. He refused to let the narrative be written by strangers. I pause here to ask you, the heartbeat of Anything You Want, imagine yourself in Barış's shoes. Standing at the altar of a wedding that isn't happening, with hundreds of eyes judging you. Would you have the strength to trust your partner, or would doubt consume you? Is unconditional trust possible in the face of public humiliation? Share your deepest thoughts in the comments below. The sun slid lower, painting the water with streaks of copper and violet. Istanbul seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the scream, the crash, the ending. And then, a chime. It was not a dramatic phone call with weeping on the other end. It was not a wall of text explaining the unexplainable. It was a simple ping on the manager's screen. Coordinates. Nothing more. A single point on a digital map, blinking rhythmically. It pointed away from the Bosphorus, away from the lights and the dresses and the glossy speeches. It pointed to a small house curled at the edge of a wooded stretch, miles from the chaos, quiet as a held note. Barış didn't ask permission. He didn't consult his publicist. He left the questions, the flashbulbs, and the stunned guests behind him like shed skin. He drove with the force of a promise, as if the coordinates had been stitched into the rhythm of his own heartbeat. He navigated the asphalt arteries of the city, pushing past the traffic, past the noise, driving deeper into the hush of the green outskirts. At that country retreat, where the loudest thing was the wind rustling through ancient pine trees, he did not find a drama queen. He did not find a headline villain plotting her next move. He found a woman who had crumpled under a weight that did not belong to love. "I had to get away," she whispered, her voice cracking under the strain. "Not from you, Barış. Never from you. From the noise. From all the expectations that don't blink, that don't sleep. I'm terrified that the world wants a perfect bride more than it wants me. And I'm afraid I'll vanish trying to be her." What Barış Baktaş did next redrew the map of devotion. A lesser man might have asked about the money wasted on the venue. A prouder man might have spoken about the humiliation of the guests waiting in vain. A calculating man might have worried about the damage to their brand. Barış did none of these things. He dropped to his knees so their eyes were perfectly level. He took her cold, trembling hands into his own, hands that felt like fragile birds, and he spoke quietly, like an oath sworn in a cathedral of two. "If time is what you need, it's yours," he said, his voice steadying her trembling soul. "If space is what helps you breathe, I'll stand back. I want you, Yağmur. Not a performance. I want a life with you, not a spectacle for them. The wedding is just a party. You are the purpose." There were no vows written on parchment. There was no officiant in robes. There was no playlist of carefully curated love songs. And yet, that room of wood and fading light witnessed the truest ceremony of their lives. They held each other on the floor of that cabin and shook with the kind of tears that empty you out and make room for a new beginning. In that embrace, stripped of the finery and the expectations, they chose each other, not for a headline, not for a camera, but for everything that would follow when no one was looking. Morning arrived like a reporter desperate for a quote. The sun rose over Istanbul, but the villa was empty, the flowers wilting, the champagne flat. The world wanted confessions. They wanted apologies, timelines, a villain neatly labeled for their consumption. They got none. The couple built a wall of silence you couldn't buy your way past. Bookings were cancelled without explanation. Social feeds, usually vibrant with updates, went dark. They retreated to that modest hideaway where everything had broken and then mended with trembling hands. A week crept by, filled with the static of speculation. And then, a small breach, unintended, honest. During an unrelated interview, Barış's sister, a woman known for her gentle and grounded nature, offered a sentence that set off sparks of hope across fan pages. When pressed about the scandal, she simply smiled and said, "They're together, but they're healing." Sometimes love needs quiet more than it needs speeches. What followed wasn't the outrage many predicted. A wave of tenderness rose instead. Timelines filled not with blame but with understanding. "Better a sincere pause than a pretty lie," one comment read, gathering a chorus of agreement beneath it. It seemed the world was ready to forgive the disruption of a party in exchange for the preservation of a soul. And then, the turning point that silenced the cynics forever. Barış spoke. But he did not speak from a studio chair, wearing a suit, beneath the harsh glare of studio lights. He filmed himself walking through the trees near the cabin, the morning light breaking into ribbons through the canopy. The phone shook slightly in his hand, mirroring the tremor in his breath. He looked tired, but peaceful. The video didn't explode, it bloomed. It passed softly from friend to friend, shared in group chats and forums, and still found millions. It felt less like a public statement and more like a confession to the air, a love letter sent via satellite. The next day, Yağmur answered. There was no press release drafted by lawyers. There was no stylized photoshoot. There was one story. A single picture of two hands. Not manicured for a campaign, not holding champagne flutes. Just ordinary hands, interlaced at a wooden kitchen table, bathed in morning light. Her caption was brief, yet it held the weight of a novel. Thank you for keeping hold when I lost my grip on myself. Half the country went quiet for a moment, as if listening to a heartbeat return to rhythm. Their teams broke the silence only to shield it. A short note released to the press said what needed saying and nothing more. Yağmur and Barış are prioritizing their well-being. No new dates were announced. No timeline was given. No promise to reschedule accompanied by fireworks and a sponsored cake. In a world that measures feelings in clicks and carrots, they chose the most rebellious path available to people like them: privacy. There were sessions of therapy whispered about but never disclosed, because healing doesn't need a caption. They relied on the support from his family and quiet check-ins from hers. Will there be another date? Maybe. Maybe not. But one wise fan wrote something that stuck to the ribs of the story, a sentiment that defines this new chapter. They already married with their eyes, with honesty, with the decision to stay. We often mistake the wedding for the marriage, the party for the partnership. Yağmur Yüksel and Barış Baktaş reminded us all that the most important vows are the ones spoken in the dark, when everything else falls away. They taught us that sometimes, you have to run away from the world to find your way back to each other. As they continue to build their life in the quiet corners of existence, we send them nothing but peace. Thank you for journeying with us through this emotional landscape here on Anything You Want. If this deep dive touched your heart or opened your eyes to the pressures of fame, please leave a like and share this video with fellow fans. We are curious, do you think couples should prioritize their mental health over public expectations, even on their wedding day? Tell us in the comments, and we will heed your call. And finally, a reminder to click that join button to support independent, deep dive storytelling. Until the next story unfolds, remember, everyone has a story, and here, we listen to anything you want.